Today, we're unpacking one of the most explosive geopolitical events of 2026, the U.S. military operation in Venezuela, the capture of President Nicolás Maduro, and President Donald Trump's declaration that the United States will now take over running Venezuela, even temporarily. What's real? What isn't? Why did this happen? And who benefits? Let's break it all down step by step. In early January 2026, the United States carried out a major military operation in Venezuela. According to official U.S. government statements, more than 150 aircraft and special operations forces took part, with airstrikes across Caracas and other strategic sites. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro and his wife Celia Flores were captured and flown to the United States. The U.S. Justice Department says they face charges including narco-terrorism. Trump later publicly said the U.S. will run Venezuela temporarily until a safe, proper, and judicious transition can occur. Trump publicly presented several reasons for this unprecedented action. Drug trafficking claims. The administration says Maduro's government was deeply involved in narcotics trafficking, even labeling his government a narco-terrorist organization, threat to American security. Trump has repeatedly asserted that drugs and criminals linked to Venezuela harm the American people. Regional security and influence. He framed the move as part of reasserting U.S. power in the Western Hemisphere and preventing harmful influences. But are these claims backed by solid evidence? Here's what verified sources reveal. Drug trafficking. Venezuela has significant corruption, and there are documented cases of military and political officials turning a blind eye to drug routes. The U.S. alleges that massive amounts of cocaine transit through Venezuela, but global drug trafficking data show that most illegal drugs coming into the U.S. originate in Mexico, Colombia, and Peru, not Venezuela itself. Maduro as drug kingpin. The U.S. has indicted Maduro and offered rewards for his arrest, alleging cartel ties. But independent verification of Maduro personally directing transnational drug supply chains is not definitely established. Evidence points more towards systemic corruption and complicity rather than Maduro personally running a multinational drug empire. Mentally ill people and prisoners. Trump claims that Venezuela is sending mentally ill people and high-security criminals into the U.S. as part of an organized campaign lacks credible verification. There's no independent, reliable evidence tracking such systematic targeting. This appears to be a political framing rather than a substantiated claim. Before the Caracas attack, U.S. forces struck vessels they alleged were drug-shipping boats. Reuters reported that the U.S. attacked a Venezuelan dock area where drugs were allegedly loaded onto small boats, but independent verification of these specific boats transporting drugs directly to the U.S. is absent. No international body like the UN Office on Drugs and Crime has confirmed Venezuela as the primary source of drugs entering the U.S. So, were these boats targeted because they were proven drug smugglers? The public record doesn't definitely show that. Under international law, attacking a sovereign nation without clear self-defense or UN authorization is generally considered illegal. Experts say the U.S. operation likely violated core principles of the United Nations Charter. Independent legal analysts have called it a crime of aggression. Donald Trump invoked what he called the Monroe Doctrine, an updated Monroe Doctrine, claiming the Western Hemisphere should be free of hostile influence. The original Monroe Doctrine from 1823 was U.S. policy resisting European interference in the Americas. However, subsequent U.S. leaders renounced the idea that force would automatically justify American intervention. International norms now reject unilateral invasions except in self-defense or with UN backing. So, while politically this gives covers for intervention, legally it has no standing under modern international law. Venezuela has the world's largest proven oil reserves. Trump publicly stated that U.S. companies will rebuild Venezuela's oil infrastructure. Critics argue that control over oil resources is an underlying motive, not just combating drugs. This raises questions. Is energy security part of the strategy? Are economic interests shaping foreign policy? Let's be clear, removing a sitting president via military force and installing or controlling government functions is the definition of a coup d'etat. Whether the U.S. calls it law enforcement or regime change, the result, deposing Maduro without Venezuela's consent, fits the textbook definition of a coup. Critics and international organizations have widely described it this way. There are several intersecting drivers. National security narrative. Drugs and crime are framed as threats. Geopolitical influence. Reasserting U.S. power in Latin America after years of perceived decline. Economic interest. Oil and energy security are undeniably part of the calculus. Political messaging, presenting strength to a U.S. domestic audience. No single explanation suffices. It's a mixture of strategy, ideology, and interests. Today, global power dynamics are multipolar. China, Russia, and the EU all shape world affairs. Relying on the 19th century doctrines in the 21st century is controversial. Many see it as outdated and imperialistic. Is blunt talk like Venezuela fuck around and found out typical? Some argue that U.S. political culture, especially under Trump, does favor blunt, transactional rhetoric, but foreign policy traditionally operates under nuance and diplomatic language. This raw language reflects a political style more than a diplomatic norm. It's part of how Trump communicates, but it's not standard professional discourse in international relations. Let's break down the interests. Beneficiaries, U.S. oil companies, access to new resources. Trump's political base, perceived as strength and assertiveness. Certain Venezuelan opposition groups align with the U.S. Now, who loses? Venezuelan sovereignty, regional stability, international norms, and global trusts. International reactions vary. Some governments condemn the invasion as a violation of sovereignty. Others cautiously praise the removal of a controversial leader. Legal experts warned about the precedent it sets. This operation bears similarities to past U.S. interventions: Panama 1989, Cuba Bay of Pigs, Chile 1973, but its skill in direct capture of a sitting president is unprecedented. What does this reveal about Donald Trump? Traits in play, risk-taking and assertiveness, prioritizing Americans' perceived strength, willingness to use military force for political or strategic goals. This event may define his legacy, not just as a politician, but as a foreign policy actor. Is U.S. control of Venezuela a good thing? That depends on your values. If you prioritize stability and sovereignty, this is deeply concerning. If you focus on countering criminal networks and strengthening influence, some see benefits. If you emphasize oil and economics, this has huge implications. What's undeniable, this moment will be studied for decades in history, law, and foreign policy classes. Thanks for watching. Drop your questions in the comments. What do you think about the U.S. action in Venezuela? And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives on world events.